January 1943, high above the frozen clouds over northern France. The sky was a broken field of white and gray, stitched with contrails and the thunder of engines. Below, the countryside slept under occupation. Above, formations of American B-17 flying fortresses cut through the air, heavy, loud, and strangely methodical. From their cockpits, German fighter pilots watched with disbelief. They had seen bombers before. Clumsy, scattered, barely accurate machines that wasted half their payloads on open fields. These new American formations seemed almost arrogant. Slow-moving giants flying in perfect boxes, daylight raids against one of the most fortified regions in Europe. At first, the Luftwaffe pilots laughed. To them, these flying fortresses were little more than oversized targets. Their command told them American bombers couldn't hit anything without diving. That daylight bombing was suicide. Then the first reports arrived from Rouen, then Wilhelmshaven, then Kiel. Factories hit dead center, dockyards burning, bridges split apart with surgical precision. The laughter faded. Something unseen guided those bombs, something the Germans couldn't yet explain. In 1942, America entered the European War with more than soldiers. It brought engineers, mathematicians, and an industrial vision unlike anything the world had seen. While Germany had ruled the skies over Europe for 3 relentless years, its air campaigns relied on experience and instinct, the art of the ace, the intuition of the hunter. America approached war differently. It turned destruction into a science. At the heart of that science lay a small, secret mechanical eye, the Norden Bombsight. Developed in secrecy before the war, it looked almost fragile. A metal gyroscope with glass lenses and brass gears. But what it could do was revolutionary. Using gyroscopic stabilization and an analog computer, it calculated airspeed, wind drift, and altitude in real time, allowing bombers to release their payloads with astonishing accuracy from 20,000 feet. The U.S. Army Air Forces called it the weapon that would win the war. Pilots were sworn to protect its secret. Bombardiers took oaths declaring they'd destroy the device before capture. The Norden wasn't just technology. It was ideology, proof that precision, discipline, and ingenuity could outperform fear and instinct. To the Germans, this idea was almost laughable. Daylight precision bombing seemed suicidal. British Bomber Command under Arthur Harris had already abandoned the concept, turning instead to night raids and area bombing. But the Americans persisted. By mid-1943, under 8th Air Force Command, formations of B-17s and B-24s began flying deep into occupied Europe, guided by that unassuming blue bombsight locked behind steel doors in the nose of every bomber. Each mission was a test of belief. Could machines and mathematics replace instinct and chaos? And soon, the test would unfold over the industrial heart of Germany itself. The Luftwaffe had ruled Europe's skies since 1939. From the blitzkrieg over Poland to the smoldering ruins of Rotterdam and London, German air dominance was a symbol of speed, aggression, and daring. Their pilots were craftsmen of destruction, trained through experience, sharpened through survival. But by 1943, their empire of air was beginning to fray. The U.S. 8th Air Force, newly stationed in England, arrived with a different philosophy. Where German raids had been about precision by instinct, the Americans aimed for precision by design. Every bomber was part of a system, a flying equation powered by synchronized engines, calibrated instruments, and trained crews. The Norden Bombsight was the brain, but it needed discipline to think. Before each mission, crews gathered in hushed briefing rooms across East Anglia. Maps were unfurled, targets circled in red, weather reports whispered. Then came the final reminder. Your bombsight is classified above top secret. Protect it with your life. The Germans, meanwhile, had intelligence reports but refused to believe them. Their officers insisted no mechanical device could compensate for altitude, wind, and motion in real time. To them, the American claim of hitting a pickle barrel from 20,000 feet was propaganda. a morale tale for naive crews flying to their deaths. That illusion shattered on August 17, 1943. During the raid on Regensburg-Schweinfurt, German observers watched as hundreds of fortresses crossed the sky in unbroken formation, sunlight flashing off their aluminum bodies like mirrored blades. When the bombs fell, they struck not open fields but ball-bearing plants, fuel depots, and assembly lines. Precise, calculated, devastating. The Luftwaffe scrambled to understand. Somewhere in those flying machines, a secret had changed the balance between instinct and mathematics. To understand the terror that followed, one must see the war through different lenses: human, mechanical, and psychological. For the American bombardier, the Norden Bombsight was not just a tool, it was a covenant of accuracy. Inside the nose of the bomber, isolated from the rest of the crew, he peered through a glass bubble into the abyss below. The hum of the engines faded into a steady rhythm, the heartbeat of machinery and men. Through a gyroscopic lens, he adjusted altitude, wind drift, and airspeed until the crosshairs locked onto a point no larger than a doorway. When he pressed the release, there was a moment of stillness, then the quiet whistle of falling steel. For German soldiers on the ground, that sound became a symbol of something new: invisible mathematical precision. They had endured British night raids, chaotic and imprecise, but American daylight raids were surgical, methodical, almost indifferent. One German factory worker in Bremen described it later. "We thought we were safe in daylight. Then the bombs began to land one after another, like a ruler drawn from heaven." Technically, the Norden was a masterpiece of engineering. Invented by Dutch engineer Carl Norden and refined through secret U.S. Navy contracts, it used gyroscopes, analog computers, and an internal autopilot system that could steer the bomber itself during the bomb run. When properly used, it could correct for wind speed, altitude, and course deviation with remarkable precision. In testing, within 75 feet of the target from 20,000 feet, but its true strength was not only mechanical, it represented faith. The American belief that technology could moralize warfare, that accuracy could replace chaos, that science could make destruction just. The Norden Bombsight was presented as a moral compass as much as a targeting tool. Its crews were told they could end the war faster, with fewer civilian casualties, by making every bomb count. The irony was that, to the Germans, that same precision felt inhuman. It stripped warfare of passion and replaced it with calculation. The whine of descending bombs became a cold signature of American industry. Efficient, emotionless, unstoppable. Each time German pilots dived through formation fire to reach the bombers, they faced a wall of 50 caliber guns, synchronized, disciplined, never breaking. They realized too late that they weren't fighting mere planes, but a network, an airborne factory of death powered by mathematics. The laughter that once echoed in Luftwaffe briefings turned into uneasy silence. From the German pilot's seat, the sky itself had changed character. What once seemed an open battlefield now felt like a grid. Invisible lines of calculation dictating every turn, climb, and dive. The B-17s flew not in loose formations but in geometric precision, their paths shaped by the logic of the Norden. To the Luftwaffe, this discipline was unnerving. Attacking one bomber meant entering a field of interlocking fire, each gunner guided by training manuals that read like engineering blueprints. The German pilots learned that the Americans didn't fight by instinct, they fought by system. Everything was measured, logged, predicted. Even chaos seemed rehearsed. The Luftwaffe's daring aces, once proud of their personal flair, found themselves powerless before an army of ordinary men obeying mathematical order. And still, amidst all this machinery, there was something profoundly human. Inside those bomber crews, 19-year-olds traced the names of their loved ones on cold metal. They carried small Bibles, pocket photos, and nervous hope. The Norden Bombsight, gleaming, intricate, sacred, was always covered before takeoff with a canvas shroud. To them, it was not merely classified equipment. It was the eye of justice. When they looked through it, they weren't just aligning a target. They were aligning themselves with an idea that precision could bring peace. Yet each successful strike revealed the paradox. Precision did not shorten the war, it only intensified it. The German pilots stopped laughing. The Americans stopped believing they could bomb their way to peace. And somewhere in that cold space between faith and firepower, modern warfare was born. The stage was now set for the moment when precision would turn into terror. February 25, 1944. The day the laughter finally died. Over southern Germany, the 8th Air Force launched what became known as Big Week. Hundreds of American bombers, guided by the unblinking glass eyes of the Norden Bombsight, flew deep into the Reich to shatter the Luftwaffe's industrial heart. The morning sky above Regensburg was crystal clear, the kind of blue pilots prayed for and anti-aircraft gunners feared. Below, German factories churned out Messerschmitt fighters and engines, the lifeblood of the Luftwaffe's resistance. At 20,000 feet, B-17 formations emerged from thin white trails, a grid of silver geometry against heaven's calm. Inside one bomber, the bombardier leaned into his sight. The plane's automatic pilot, slave to the Norden, made fine corrections. Left, 2 degrees. Altitude steady. The world below shrank to a trembling point of light. He pressed the release. 60 bombs fell as one. German witnesses recalled it as a rain of measured fire. The munitions plant vanished beneath a curtain of dust and flame. Streets, railway lines, and workshops were torn with terrifying symmetry. The kind of destruction that felt less like battle and more like punishment. Luftwaffe pilots scrambled, climbing through contrails into the oncoming steel wall. Their machine guns sparked, but the bombers never wavered. Dozens of American planes fell that day, torn apart by cannon fire. Yet still, the bombardiers held their course until the last second. The Norden crosshair steady even as wings burned. When the smoke cleared, Regensburg's engine works were gone. In Schweinfurt, too, half the ball-bearing plants lay silent. The precision raids had done what months of indiscriminate bombing never could. They cut into the mechanical heart of Germany's war machine. But in doing so, they revealed something deeper. Precision was no longer mercy. It was control. Calculation had replaced chaos, and the new language of war was numbers. Altitude, range, yield, impact. From that week onward, the Luftwaffe understood that the Americans were not fighting a romantic war. They were fighting a scientific one. By the end of Big Week, the message was unmistakable. The Luftwaffe, once the symbol of European air dominance, had been forced to retreat. Over 600 German fighters were destroyed in the air and on the ground. Hangars burned. Airfields lay cratered. Survivors described the aftermath not as defeat, but as realization. The skies that had once belonged to them now belonged to calculation. The Norden Bombsight had turned every raid into a lesson in inevitability. German commanders, reviewing the wreckage, began to understand that no number of brave pilots could stop an army that fought with mathematics, factories, and faith in machinery. For the American crews, there was no celebration. The bombers returned home shredded, engines coughing smoke, landing gears barely holding. Inside, bombardiers wiped soot from the Norden's lens, that same cold glass that had guided them through fire and clouds. Below them, Germany smoldered in perfect patterns of destruction. Precision had achieved what passion could not. The laughter that once echoed in Luftwaffe hangars was now replaced by silence, and the distant hum of another wave approaching. When the smoke of Big Week lifted, Europe's industrial map had changed. The Luftwaffe's production had been crippled. Aircraft output fell by nearly half in the following months. Ball-bearing shortages cascaded through German factories, slowing tank assembly, delaying engines, grounding squadrons that once roamed freely across the continent. The Americans had lost heavily, over 250 bombers destroyed in just 6 days. But the balance of air power had irreversibly shifted. Germany could replace planes, but not pilots. The skies, once owned by the daring and the individual, now belonged to the organized and the mathematical. For the Germans who survived those raids, The sight of precision bombing carried a psychological weight far beyond the physical damage. Townspeople began marking time not by church bells, but by the distant rhythmic whine of bombs, a sound that came with unnatural timing and terrifying consistency. Even propaganda ministers struggled to explain it. How could an enemy so methodical, so emotionless, destroy with such elegance? For American crews, the Norden Bombsight had proven its promise, but also revealed its burden. It was said that the device was guarded like the crown jewels, and that bombardiers swore an oath to destroy it if captured. Yet what it represented could never be hidden. The fusion of science and warfare. The idea that precision could purify destruction. But precision had also exposed its paradox. Each success only led to greater demands, deeper targets, more destruction. The moral comfort of accuracy blurred beneath clouds of smoke. The more exact the strikes became, the less human they felt. The Norden had changed not only how wars were fought, but how soldiers thought about killing. By mid-1944, the results were clear to every German eye that looked skyward. The American bombers came not as waves of chaos, but as instruments of routine. Formations so steady they looked mechanical, their bombs falling in intervals as precise as a heartbeat. What had begun as mockery had turned into dread. German pilots now entered each dogfight knowing they were no longer contending with men, but with a nation that had mechanized its very will. In captured reports, Luftwaffe officers described the U.S. daylight raids as unavoidable arithmetic. There was no emotion in their description, only resignation. "We could intercept," one pilot wrote, "but we could not interrupt." That distinction defined the new era. The old art of aerial dueling had been replaced by an industrial rhythm no pilot could break. The Americans, for their part, returned home as both victors and witnesses. In debriefing rooms across England, bombardiers set the Norden Bombsight carefully on the table. A device once hidden beneath canvas, now bathed in the gray light of victory. Its lens was cracked, its edges scorched, yet it had done what was asked. Factories were gone, airfields silenced, and in the ruins, a new idea had emerged. That precision was not merely a tactic, but a philosophy. Yet the men who looked through that lens knew what the world would learn too late. Precision is not mercy. It is control, and control in war is rarely clean. The echoes of the Norden would reach far beyond Europe, into the deserts of the Middle East, the jungles of Asia, the blue glow of radar screens in future wars. In the quiet that followed the war, when Europe's skies no longer trembled with engines, the story of the Norden Bombsight became something larger than a weapons tale. It was the story of an idea, that technology could refine war, that precision could make violence moral. For decades, the United States guarded its secret. The Norden was locked away in crates, its blueprints sealed, its legend wrapped in patriotic myth. In post-war interviews, generals spoke of it with reverence, as if it had been divine intervention rather than human invention. To them, it was proof that American ingenuity, the union of science, discipline, and faith, could bend even destruction toward justice. But among those who had looked through its lens, the memories were not triumphant. Many bombardiers confessed later that the crosshairs never left their minds. "You don't see people," one veteran said quietly. "You see coordinates." That was the moral evolution, or erosion, the Norden had begun. It turned the battlefield into a map, and killing into geometry. The Germans who survived those raids remembered another sound. Not the bombs, but the silence before them. A silence so measured, so deliberate, that it felt inevitable. That silence became the sound of American dominance. Mechanical, precise, unstoppable. The Norden's glass lens became a symbol of clarity and blindness at once. It gave humanity the power to see further, aim sharper, and justify what followed. From its cold precision came a lineage: smart bombs, guided missiles, computer targeting. The technology changed. The philosophy endured. In the end, the Norden Bombsight was not the weapon that ended a war. It was the mirror that revealed what the war had become. A contest not of courage, but of calculation. The laughter that once filled Luftwaffe hangars had long faded, replaced by the hum of a new kind of warfare, silent, exact, and infinite. And as the last bombers of the 8th Air Force were retired, their nose compartments empty and cold, the faint ring of metal against glass echoed like a memory, a reminder that even precision, when born of fear, carries the weight of its perfection.